What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And welcome to our show. It is Thursday, July 23rd, 2020. And sure happy it's Thursday, sure happy it's Thursday, sure happy it's Thursday. We've got a lot to talk about right now. We're going to get right into it. And a reminder, we're going to do news until I'm out of news, and then we'll open up the phones for your comments, questions, observations, opinions. And please, folks, keep the language clean. We had a little goof yesterday and from one of the callers. And I don't want to have to reach through the phone line and wrap your knuckles with an architect's ruler. So sort of keep it clean. Anyway, interestingly enough, this has been all over the corporate media. Apparently, lightning hit the Statue of Liberty in New York, actually hit the pedestal it's sitting on. And a lot of thunderstorms all over the country. We've had a few of them here. A lot of clouds outside the window now, and they're saying we'll have thunder and lightning a little bit later in the evening here. Now then, I want to start talking about all this sound and fury about the consulates, the Chinese consulates, starting with the one in Houston, which has been described as a massive spy center. And the FBI is probing Chinese army suspects in 25 plus cities. So they're rolling up what they claim is an intelligence operation by China to steal our intellectual property, in other words, industrial secrets. And industrial espionage is a lot bigger than the other kind, the James Bond kind. So, yeah, of course they're doing it. Everybody does it, including the United States here. But what really gets interesting, they're closing down the Houston Consulate. In fact, tomorrow's the last day, and they're basically burning all their secret documents. But apparently, they're also looking at the Chinese consulate over in San Francisco, where they're accusing the consulate of harboring a wanted Chinese military researcher. And the researcher is named Tang Wan, was interviewed by the FBI on June 20th about her concealing her ties to the People's Liberation Army while she was a researcher at the University of California at Davis. And the FBI executed a search of her home, and her electronic media showed further evidence she had hidden her ties to the PLA when applying for a visa. So they've got her basically for visa fraud. Court documents show that the Bureau assesses that at some point following the search and interview, Tang went to the Chinese consulate where the FBI says she has remained. So her official story is that everybody who was, at university in China had to wear a military uniform, and she didn't even know what the insignia means. So apparently photographs reveal her in the uniform of the civilian cadre of the People's Liberation Army. She was employed as a researcher at the Air Force Military Medical University. She denied serving in the Chinese military. Now they think she's a spy, and she's holed up in San Francisco. So they may shut down the San Francisco consulate. All right, let's get on to Jeffrey Epstein and that circus that's going on over there. Alan Dershowitz is smearing one of the victims, Maria Farmer, as anti-Semitic. How can you listen to anything she has to say about, poor old Jeffrey Epstein, because after all, she's an anti-Semite and a Jew hater. And this lady right now is undergoing treatment for brain cancer. She's struggling just to stay alive and is unable to defend herself. So Maria Farmer and her younger sister, Annie, were the first people to report Epstein to the FBI and NYPD all the way back in 1996. And she's one of the victims, and Dershowitz is trying to discredit her by saying she's anti-Semitic. And as one example, Dershowitz said Farmer was an anti-Semite for saying Epstein and Maxwell were connected to the Rothschilds, even though Dershowitz himself told Fox News' Laura Ingraham on Fox News he was introduced to Epstein through Lynn Forrester de Rothschild. In other cases, he took quotes from Maria Farmer from multiple sources and strung them together into what appeared to be a single sentence that would have been anti-Semitic if she'd actually said it. But in point of fact, if you go back and read the original interviews, Maria Farmer was talking about things that were being said by Ghislaine Maxwell. So Dershowitz misattributes them, edits them heavily, and is out there trying to smear Maria Farmer. I don't think it's really going to work. Because after all, Epstein did what Epstein did. Okay? And any opinions that Maria Farmer may have are irrelevant to that. And I hope the court is smart enough to see that. But Dershowitz's attitude is, once somebody's accused of being an anti-Semite, don't listen to them anymore. All right, so let's talk about COVID-19. The U.S. is on track to record 1 million new coronavirus cases in just 2 weeks. Maybe. Going to get to that in a minute. The daily death toll rises to its highest since May. After 1,100 deaths are recorded in a day, Texas sets a single-day high for fatalities. California sees a record 12,000 cases. In fact, California has overtaken New York as the epicenter of the COVID-19 cases. It's almost like they're in a competition. You know, let's get the numbers up there. There's a trophy winning, you know, and it's almost like it's the new status symbol. We've got more COVID-19 cases than you do. But I said maybe because of this issue of the false positives. And here's an article that came out of Zero Hedge, where the Connecticut State Library, the Department of Public Health, said that they took 144 samples, coronavirus tests, and apparently 161 specimens were collected. A total of 91 of those showed false positives. So that's 90 false positives out of 144 coronavirus tests. That's more than half. You'd have more accurate results flipping a coin. And so we don't really know if these numbers are really as high as they're being said. Plus, we already know that doctors and hospitals are being incentivized to blame everything on COVID-19. Somebody dies in a car accident, they've got COVID-19. Oh, it's a COVID-19 death. It's insane. It really is insane. Another article, this one is coming out of Madness Hub. Will COVID-19 really be worse this winter? Scientists admit it is currently impossible to prove the coronavirus spreads slower in the summer. Remember back last spring, they said, oh, during the summer, it's going to be really low key. And, you know, the second wave will happen in winter. But apparently, according to researchers, it's impossible to know whether Britain's coronavirus outbreak will get worse. Concerns are growing that Britain will be hit by a second wave of COVID-19. When the weather turns colder, the current drop in infections and death is merely a temporary reprieve. However, there's another study out there saying that the U.S. coronavirus cases may be leveling off. And the hotspot states are seeing a slowdown in new infections. They still haven't hit the peak. They're slowing down. Okay. Biden has gone after Donald Trump for saying coronavirus originated in China. Well, even the Chinese are saying that. And he actually came out, Biden actually came out saying that Americans can't tell one kind of Asian from others, that Americans can't distinguish between a South Korean and someone from Beijing. Well, besides insulting all Americans here, you know, the media gave him a pass on that. If Trump said something like that, you'd never hear the end of it. But Biden can say it and get away with it. But the reality is, if you spend time in Asia, you know, just like any place else, you learn to tell where people are from. There are differences. Physiology, language, what they're wearing. Apparently, America's most powerful CEOs have banded together to ask every business to require customer face masks. And yet we see all these studies saying the face masks aren't really all that effective. That in fact, they're collecting viruses on the outside. Somebody described face mask as a petri dish, you know, strapped over your nose. All right, United Airlines now requires all passengers to wear masks inside the airport terminals before boarding, as the Delta CEO warns that those who refuse to wear face coverings will have to find another airline to fly with. Well, that was certainly the case with American Airlines. We had to wear masks the entire time we were flying, which was a total of 4 flights, 2 out and 2 back. And yeah, the face masks were mandatory at the Philadelphia airport and pretty much everywhere else we went. And even in the pre-recorded safety message, they included have your face mask on, and if you take your face mask off, you may not be allowed to fly with us ever again. So the only time we could take the face mask off is going through TSA, when they would look at our photo ID and they'd have to see our face. So we'd take the sunglasses off and the mask down, and they'd say, yep, that's you. And I told them nobody else would want to be me. Apparently, Disneyland is getting full authoritarian. They're demanding that everybody wear a mask there, even when you're walking and eating. If you're eating or drinking something, you have to follow social distancing rules. They want you to stop and stay in one place, 6 feet around you, and then you can eat and drink whatever it is you bought from the stands. Apparently, aware that some people have difficulty breathing with these masks on, they have what are called relaxation stations, where you can take off the mask for a while and breathe. Some smart person is going to come out with little oxygen boxes. Like you step in, you close the door like the old style telephone booths, throw $1 in the slot there, and it just floods with pure oxygen so you can get your breath again. They already have something like that, I think, in Japan to deal with the pollution. Apparently, Dr. Anthony Fauci, whose expert advice to President Trump has resulted in the complete shutdown of the greatest economic engine in world history, has known since 2005 that chloroquine is an effective inhibitor of coronaviruses. This was due to research done by the National Institutes of Health, of which he is the director. In connection with the SARS outbreak caused by a coronavirus dubbed SARS-CoV, the NIH researched chloroquine and concluded it was effective at stopping the SARS coronavirus in its tracks. The COVID-19 bug is likewise a coronavirus labeled SARS-CoV-2. So Fauci has known for 15 years that chloroquine is actually effective. But there's money to be made with new medicines and new vaccines, so that's the direction they're going to go here. Apparently, these 4 companies that are developing vaccines are looking at some of the adjuvants that were used in the swine flu vaccine, including the one that caused narcolepsy. And they're considering using it again. So you won't get COVID-19, but you'll come down with narcolepsy. For those who don't understand what I'm talking about, narcolepsy is a condition where you fall asleep at very odd moments during the day, and you can't help yourself. Your brain simply says, it's time to go to sleep, and you go to sleep. And people with severe cases of narcolepsy, they can't even be allowed to drive. That's how bad it is. Now, some coronavirus vaccines will contain a genetically modified version of the original virus. That's actually becoming quite a common practice. But what it basically means is you're being injected with GMOs. A lot of people are very, very concerned about that. So the World Health Organization is warning that a coronavirus vaccine will not be available anytime this year. Mike Ryan, head of the World Health Organization's Emergencies Program, said the first use of a COVID-19 vaccine cannot be expected until early 2021. Okay. Government has admitted its contact tracing program is unlawful in a legal letter which confirms it's been running in breach of data protection laws since it was launched last May. Confirmation the program failed to adhere to privacy regulations comes as Sky News can reveal that contractors working for NHS Test and Trace have been told they may be fired following reports of dozens of staff sharing patients' confidential data on social media. That's definitely a tacky no-no. Now, the other day we were talking about over in New York where Cuomo had said you can't serve alcohol all by itself. You've got to have meals there. And the bartenders simply came up with dollar menus of snacks. Well, Cuomo has now tightened the regulations saying, no, $1 snacks don't count. It has to be a substantial amount of food, a full meal before you can sell alcohol. And it's being described as a thumb in the eye to the already crippled industry. Anyway, getting to our domestic turmoils here. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell spoke out against cancel culture on the Senate floor, referring to it as the grievance industrial complex that is infringing on free speech rights. I like that. The grievance industrial complex. That's a good one. I'm going to be using that in the future. Now, here's a story. This is getting some traction, so we got to pay attention to it. Remember the McCloskeys? He had an AR-15. She had a small little handgun. It turned out the gun was a prop that she had used in a trial. She's a lawyer herself. And the gun was assembled so it couldn't be fired. Now, it had an inertia firing pin. The pin was turned around and the spring moved to the other side. So the pin was, flat forward and it wasn't being hit by the hammer. And the gun couldn't be fired. And in the paperwork for taking it into evidence, they wrote right down, gun cannot be fired as delivered to the laboratory. But apparently one of the circuit attorneys, Kim Gardner's prosecutors, ordered the gun be reassembled in a working condition so that they could declare it readily capable of lethal use. Now, nobody pulled a trigger during this confrontation, and they're trying to make a big deal case out of the fact that these homeowners displayed the guns as a warning to these rioters that had broken through the gate into this private community and were impinging on privately owned property. That's tampering with the evidence. It's a frame-up. Frankly, whoever gave the order to reassemble the gun in a firing condition, that's cause for action right there. I mean, when the McCloskey's defense attorney gets in front of a jury, that's the first thing they need to go to. Her gun couldn't even fire. The prosecutors altered the gun to make it so it could fire. Remember back when they were insisting that you could modify an airsoft rifle to fire live rounds? Just insane. Anyway, we need to keep that one going. It's tampering with the evidence. The whole case should be thrown out just on that point alone. Meanwhile, Portland is still dealing, I think they're up to 56 days of rioting. And the Portland mayor, who's a leftist, tried chatting with the rioters. They shred him to bits. Apparently, they're not happy with him either. The federal agents hit the Portland mayor, Ted Wheeler, with tear gas after a crowd of angry protesters threw trash and water bottles at him, demanded he resign following 2 months of chaos across the city. So the feds tackle the rioters, hit them with the batons, force them to run away from the battered Portland courthouse they were trying to break into. And one observer remarked, these people have decided the only way they'll stop is to get their rear end kicked, so they got their rear end kicked. Not exactly what they say, but this is a clean show. After rioters in Portland, Oregon tried yet again to break into the boarded up and battered courthouse, federal officials aggressively cleared out the leftists from in front of the building. Now then, note that word, the leftists. Okay. The corporate media is trying to make it look like this is all somehow Trump's fault. And yet, which party is it out there representing, the majority of the rioters? They're leftists. They're liberal Democrats. We saw that in 2016. We're seeing it now. President Trump is going to send hundreds of federal law enforcement officers to Chicago. The Chicago mayor says she won't allow Trump's troop to terrorize our residents. Now, here's what's going on. The federal law enforcement officers, in order not to violate posse comitatus, they have to stick within their jurisdiction, which is federal buildings, protecting them, and federal employees. They're not going out into the general citizenry. All right, we got to take a break here for some commercials. We'll be right back after these few words. Please stay tuned. Welcome back to our show here, and a reminder that Republic Broadcasting, and for that matter, WhatReallyHappened.com, are in a perpetual state of fundraising. We don't get corporate grants. We don't get grants from billionaires with agendas they want us to push. We rely on our advertising and on the generosity of our listeners to keep doing what we're doing, to keep speaking truth to power. So if you would like to help out, and again, a heartfelt thank you to those of you who already have, the postal address where you can send a check, Money order, or if you prefer anonymity cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. The network thanks you. Okay, now, as we were talking about Chicago, the Chicago mayor, Lori Lightfoot, says she will not allow Trump's troops to terrorize the residents, and she's basically calling on the people of Chicago to snitch on the federal agents that are being sent down there to drive down the violent crime. And there's a lot of violent crime in Chicago. It's almost like that's been the city's image going back to the gangster days. And they don't want to lose that. Anyway, the Boston Red Sox have unveiled a massive Black Lives Matter billboard yesterday. The 250-foot billboard is adjacent to Fenway Park and faces the Massachusetts Turnpike. The huge sign features the words Black Lives Matter in the font of the Red Sox on a black background with the team's logo at the end. I still think it would be better to say all lives matter, but apparently you're called racist if you say that. The idea being that the only way you can't be a racist is to acknowledge that black lives are more important than anybody else. More important than red lives, yellow lives, green lives, peach, taupe, or mauve, or plaid lives. Over in London, a protester at a Black Lives Matter event said over this last weekend, "White man is the common enemy of everyone who believes in leftist intersectionality and that we need to get rid of them." That is some very, very strong rhetoric. Now, we're already seeing gun and ammunition sales go right through the roof here, and rhetoric like that is probably going to get people to go on out there and, get a self-defense weapon. Get on out to the Front Side Academy, learn how to use it properly. Speaking of guns here, a Brooklyn woman was killed after attempting to reason with several people illegally setting off fireworks in the neighborhood of East New York. And apparently, the victim, 33-year-old Shativia Wells, was just following the advice of Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams to try resolving nonviolent disputes through community policing, which does not involve calling actual police officers. And yes, this Shativia had heard it, was probably in the back of her mind, and her mother said, it's not a good idea. You don't know who you're approaching. These kids are not respectful anymore. They're more ruthless. Apparently, the Portland rioters have got some high-powered lasers, and apparently 3 federal officers were injured when the lasers were shown into their eyes, and they're saying that they may not fully recover their vision. So, it's getting serious out there. It may not be first blood, but it's definitely an attack with a weapon. Trey Gowdy is out there and basically went up against Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez over comments she made suggesting crime is on the rise in New York due to people shoplifting bread. And Trey Gowdy basically said, was the murdered 1-year-old holding a loaf of bread because this 1-year-old kid, one of a set of twins, got shot and killed. And Alexandria said, maybe this has to do with the fact that people aren't paying their rent. They're scared to pay their rent, so they go out and they need to feed their child. They don't have any money. So you maybe have to, they're put in a position where they feel like they either need to shoplift some bread or go hungry that night. This was in a Zoom video call. And there has been a lot of pushback on this, but Alexandria is refusing to back down. She's saying this is all about parents wanting to feed their children or people wanting to eat. And that may be a factor, but I think the real issue is that, you have a criminal element within society, which is now overjoyed that the police are either being defunded or completely tangled up, dealing with the Black Lives Matter protests. And so it's kind of open season out there. Apparently down in Dallas, the police arrested 674 protesters all at once. And Dallas Police Chief Renee Hall has come under severe criticism for that. But these 647 protesters were blocking a highway in the city. And again, if you go back to the Bill of Rights, we have a guaranteed right to peacefully assemble and petition the government for a redress of grievances. All right, we got to take another break for commercials. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our show here, and we're talking about what happened down in Dallas, where 674 protesters were arrested all at one time. Now, these protesters were blocking a highway in the city, and the First Amendment guarantees you a right to peacefully assemble to petition the government for redress of grievances. This does not sort of indemnify you against laws regarding the blocking of traffic. And so the Dallas police chief is being criticized for this, but I don't know what else she could have done. You know, when you block a highway, that is serious stuff. You court the possibility of accidents. You disrupt the traffic patterns. And a lot of people don't understand how very carefully those traffic patterns are laid out. And if something disrupts them, it can be hours before things get back to normal. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a phone call from Glenn in Philadelphia. Hello, Glenn. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike. Hi. I heard you talking about the McCloskeys. I wanted to chime in here about that. I feel very sorry for the McCloskeys on the one hand, and certainly the behavior of the protesters was reprehensible. They apparently tore down the gate to the gated community, came up and were verbally threatening them and that sort of thing. And yet the McCloskeys managed to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory and to conduct themselves in a manner that would allow for their offering of a manual on how not to behave with firearms. They did just about everything wrong that you can think.
Hey, what would you have done? What would you have done? You're a homeowner. Well, you've got your home there. You've got these riders coming up the lawn towards you. What are you going to do?
Okay, I own firearms. I have a concealed carry permit. I would have gone in the house, locked the door behind me, called 911. May have armed myself, and would have tried to stay out of sight, away from the windows. Just keep an eye on what's going on. Give the police a chance to arrive to address the situation. If anybody broke into the house, and this is something almost any firearms owner knows, okay. You wait you wait until they break in and cross the threshold. Inform them they were armed, tell them to get out and leave it. And if they further threaten, and you shoot them in your house, having committed breaking and entering to come in and then physically assault and threaten battery to you, then you can fire upon them. Okay,
you're not dealing with just one person. You're dealing with the whole crowd. They've got more people than you've got ammunition.
And it's not a matter of numbers.
What happens? What happens if you're aware the police aren't coming because they've been defunded or they're all tangled up with the other rioters? I mean, because if you have that crowd of rioters, coming up the street, they've broken the gate to get into your community. Why aren't the cops already there?
How is being outside where the rioters can move freely about you and surround you better than being in your house where they have to break in to get you and their movements are going to be constrained? Okay, you're far safer actually being in an environment where the protesters would be constrained.
Maybe they didn't want their homes broken.
That's fine. Nobody wants their home broken. Nobody wants their home, damaged or anything like that. But it beats the heck out of being where they are now. Okay, and you have to be, and it is foolishness beyond words to brandish a non-functional fire weapon. If you a firearm, if you think that you're going to, you take out a disabled firearm way she did, and then brandish it at someone. What if somebody else, has a loaded firearm and shoots you? You never fake the use of a firearm. You only draw a weapon, a real weapon, if it's justified. And the AR-15 was certainly overkill. In that situation, I personally would have gone in and locked the door and called the police. and then waited to see what happens. Okay, I understand their anger.
Let me share a story with you. Let me share a story with you. Years ago, before they went to encrypted radios, the police channels were wide open, and anybody with a scanner could hear them. And I remember one time when I was living in North Hollywood, when there was a break-in, an intruder, and a shooting going on, and I heard the police just basically saying, "Do you think they've left yet?" And they literally did not go into the premises until they were convinced the guy with the gun had already left. Okay, so
if my aunt had wheels, she'd be a wagon.
Glenn, the courts have already ruled the police are under no obligation to intervene in a violent crime against you.
Yes,
maybe the McCloskeys already knew that.
No, okay, or maybe they didn't. This is all speculation. Okay, the point is they didn't call 911. Plus, in their favor, if they had called 911, well, okay, I don't believe they did, but if they did, that's fine. That's good. They should have. But you cannot do with guns, Michael. You cannot legally do with guns what they did.
What did they do with guns that's illegal? Flourishing a gun is illegal?
Yes, brandishing a weapon is illegal. Okay, yes, you can't brandish a weapon the way she did. And it doesn't matter. She brandished. So look it up. She can't brandish. You know what?
The heavens are going to fall. She brandished a gun.
It doesn't matter what. Okay, it doesn't matter what you think. It's what the you don't.
Glenn,
if you walk outside, if you're outside your house with a loaded firearm, okay, you better have a concealed carry permit, or you have to have a concealed carry permit. If you do, you have to have a reason to.
Thank you for the call. Okay, it sounds like you're here trying to defend the prosecutor who's, basically falsified evidence to try and make a case out of two homeowners trying to protect their home from rioters. I'm sorry, my sympathies are with the McCloskeys here. Those rioters were behaving badly. I probably would have done something. I've been in a position myself of having to defend my home against an intruder with a firearm. Thankfully, I did not have to pull the trigger. But the intruder got the message. That little laser dot on the forehead told them they were being thought about, and they left rather rapidly, I would say. All right, as long as we've got the phone calls going, we've got people calling on, and let's go to Laura in Michigan. Hello, Laura. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I'm going to talk about Chicago. But first of all, I want to give my remarks. You seem to have a lot of yellow bellies that call into your program, especially that Dave from Washington, who was so ready to give parts of the United States up to the savages. So I was going to talk about Chicago. Chicago has 55 gangs in it. 55 gangs. They total estimate 117,000 members to the gangs right in Chicago. 117,000. Okay? So there was a funeral for somebody who was in a drive-by shooting. So the two gangs showed up, and they just shot the heck out of this funeral home. And a lady peering out of her window said there was bodies all over the streets, just tons of bodies, just like a war zone. This is what it's like in Chicago, okay?
Yes.
And I get tired of people like that. David with Washington, he thinks he can appease people. You cannot appease these savages. I mean, maybe Dave should give his house and property to the Black Lives Matter, and maybe he ought to give his wife and children or grandchildren also. Maybe that'll help appease them. I'm sick of hearing all these callers on your program. They're so yellow. They're just afraid to say anything against the blacks. You're not gonna appease these people. You're not gonna civilize them. It's past that, way past that.
Yeah, I'm afraid you're right.
So,
it's building up a momentum. And if they're going to keep this thing going until the election in November, there's going to be no stopping it. We'll be dealing with this violence well into next year.
Right. And I'm not willing to give 1 acre of the United States up to appease anybody. I mean, every time I hear the death toll in Chicago, I think I put thumbs up. Okay, there's 23 this weekend. We got to keep going. Got 117,000 to go. So I say, good for them. Good, keep shooting. Keep shooting each other up. Maybe that'll solve the problem.
Yeah,
Anyway,
the first.
I just wanted to get that off my.
No, I understand. The first thing when I heard about the shooting at the funeral home, the first thing I thought about, it was a gang hit. You know, they were there for the funeral of some gangbanger, and the opposing team showed up to just try and get as many as they could.
Exactly. That's exactly what happened. Like this lady said, there's just bodies all over the place. Now, how do you think the police are going to take care of anything like that? It's going to take something like troops or federal marshals or whatever to go in there. But I say just go ahead and let them shoot each other. Go ahead. Have at it. Go for it. Give them the bullets.
Yeah.
117,000
Rent a
to go.
stadium, sell tickets and streaming video rights, and just let them come in from opposite sides of the field and just go after each other. They really want to kill each other that badly. Anyway, Laura, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here and switch over to Steve Elkins. Hello, Steve. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, we know for sure now that Glenn wouldn't have been a very good Minuteman during the Revolutionary War. He would have been running in the other direction. Very sad. The McCloskeys are totally right to defend their property under the Castle Doctrine. And I would have had that if a firearm was not loaded. It should have been loaded. And I guess Glenn doesn't quite understand going inside and calling 911 or calling the police. They're throwing Molotov cocktails. They're going to toast your house. I guess he forgot. I guess his mother and father never read him the story about the little pigs and going in the house and, of course, burning it down and getting them out. That's just, I'm sorry, but the McCloskeys were very much in their right to defend their castle, their home. And
I would agree. If they could have called, again, this is speculation, they could have called 911 and the police said, we can't get to you for half an hour. Exactly.
You got to defend your property. I mean, the gate came down. That's a violent move right there. There's no longer a protest chanting outside your property. I mean, why were they picked on anyway? That's a good question, Bob. Probably because, hey, look, these are elitists. They've got a lot of money. We want to make an example. They're the ones that we want to go after. And so you tear down their gate to go into their property. That's a violation. That's trespass right there. Okay, right now there. They've gone from protest to violent for a riot now, and they were very much in their right. I tell you, I would have done the same thing, and if they got to a certain point to approach my property, I would have unloaded on them, and you'd had every right to do so because you have every right to defend yourself and your property. And I'm sorry, Glenn, you got a big yellow stripe down your back. I'm taking over for John Stadler tonight. Please, Glenn, do not call me with any lame stories and your theories of how things should be handled, because I don't even know why you're listening to this network. You're not a patriot, not a stand-up kind of guy. I'm sorry. To retreat and go in your house, huddle behind your couch, wait. Come on. This is ridiculous. They acted appropriately, and it's sad that they found that the district attorney decided to file charges. I think we need to actually kind of look closely at her for filing. What's her motive? Because they clearly followed the law. I mean, they act as if the Castle Doctrine does not exist. It exists. Yes. And they followed it. They followed it to a T. They weren't looking for the fight, but they were going to defend what they own, and they had every right to do so. It should never make it into a court of law. And the idea that, we'll dismiss the charges and pardon them, there should be no charges. It's ludicrous to charge somebody to defend your property.
Well, that's part of the liberal gun grabber agenda, is to criminalize defending your own home. At the same time, that, you've got Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. We should forgive the people who are looting and stealing because, after all, they're hungry, and we should look the other way. But if you try and defend yourself from these rioters, you're the criminal. Talk about through the looking glass.
Well, I agree, and I'll talk a little bit about that tonight also. I've got some ideas and some thoughts out there, and I think Donald Trump is kind of he's reacted a little late. I think there's some things he could have done initially, but I'll talk about that a little later on John's show tonight. But that's all I got to say. Glenn, you're way off base. I mean, go back to your fantasy land. I'm not sure why you listen to this network. You're not your normal listener, and the normal listener of this network gets it. Defend your nation, defend your property. and he didn't quite get it, so I'm not sure why he's listening. I'll see you later on, Mike. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it seemed like his agenda was to demonize the McCloskeys, to take some of the heat and pressure off this prosecutor. Anyway, we're going to switch over to Chris in Las Vegas. Hello, Chris. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Thank you so very, very much, Michael. And I certainly support, I think it was Steve Elkins before, and his assessment of Glenn, who was using many technical terms. He used brandish. He used pointed. He put weapon in there. These are all technical words. What they had was a home defense implement. They were holding it at port arms. I never saw them pointed at anyone. Even if they had, they probably would have been properly motivated to do so to defend themselves. These were not peaceful protesters. These were revolutionary terrorists, paid provocateurs trying to break into clearly posted private property. I'm a former multi-jurisdictional law enforcement perfecter of the public safety, who actually guarded, protected, and defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I have defended myself successfully against a very similar charge of resisting an officer with a weapon, supposedly. Your home defense implement that you use to guard, protect, and defend with is not a weapon. A weapon is a military device specifically defined in the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms regulations. And it has a specific description of what are weapons: full automatics, pistols and rifles, and shotguns that are below a certain length. So the misconstructing of terms and trying to use inflammatory words, word bombs as I like to call them, like brandish, which means to point. They never pointed, holding it at port arms, point it down at the ground like I did in the situation where I was, never raising it, directing it, pointing at anyone, targeting anyone, aiming at anyone, is a strictly defensive posture. That is the most passive form of protection in your home, with the appearance of arms at a safe position where you can be protected and not have to raise it to do violent force, but having it there to present in case you have to. That is not brandishing by the law. Brandishing is waving it around in an insane fashion like you're going to shoot everybody in the land in an unsafe direction. So Mr. Glenn was absolutely wrong. He was improperly informed, and he may have had a malicious agenda, like you say, of supporting the prosecution.
Okay. Chris, stay on the line. Chris, I want to bring you back after these words from our sponsors. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Chris in Las Vegas. And Chris, you were being cut off by the outro music there, so you want to finish up what you were talking about?
Well, the last thing I wanted to, besides the fact that this Glenn was all wrong about this, those people were operating, like Steve said, in the Castle Doctrine and the Stand Your Ground law. In fact, they used that exact language from standing their ground and protecting their private property against an onslaught of obviously very violent people who had already broken through the gates of a secured entrance, showing that they had malicious intents and doing bodily harm to those people. And so they were certainly doing the very minimum actions they could do to protect their property from being overrun by a gang of left-wing extreme thuggies that were there to do them harm. Sorry for the noise. Now, the last thing for you, in my opinion, this is my opinion, but this Judge Solis, whose son was shot to death and her husband was shot, it's my suggestion that this woman who claimed that she was in the basement while this thing took away, she was probably cowering down there because she was an Obamaite left-wing activist judge, very young, very inexperienced, and she was probably hiding in terror down there until they were left and went to find her shot and dead son and her wounded husband. And so that shows the lack of character, very suggestive of the lack of character at the very best of this woman. And these Obamaites are a bunch of limp-wristed, let's call them less than humans, that are there trying to color us all in the worst possible light because we have the cojones to guard, protect our own property and our own families against being overrun by these criminal thugs that call themselves the Democrat Party. So thank you very much, Michael. God bless America. God bless the Republic.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the phone call there. And one of the reasons that I thought, Glenn was way off base is his displayed confidence and trust in the police are going to show up. When I had my little encounter with an intruder in my home, we called 911. They never showed up. Remember that case in Georgetown? 3 women were sharing a condo there, and some intruders broke in and were sexually abusing one of the women. The other 2 were hiding upstairs and kept calling the police. And finally, the noise quieted down. They assumed the perpetrators had left. They hadn't. These 2 women walked downstairs. They were then captured and sexually abused. And they sued the police department, and they lost. Because the judge said there is no law that says the police are obligated to intervene in a violent attack on you. And that is absolutely the letter of the law. So anyway, we're going to go back to the phones here before we go back to the phones, breaking story, China is now going to close one of the U.S. consulates in China. So we're getting into this little tit for tat thing going on here. All right, we're going to go back to the phones here to line 1 to Voice in the Dark. Hello, Voice. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Doing fine. What's up?
Good. Well, before I even start, I had a little speech here prepared, but I've got to agree with Steve Elkins. Glenn, and I agree with you too. Glenn was a little bit off base there. And just to bring it to home, when you are in necessary need of the police, they're 2 minutes away and you've got 30 seconds.
Voice, I got to put you on hold. We've got to do a station identification break. Don't go away. Don't hang up. I'm going to come right back to you after these few words. Welcome back to our show here. Hour number 2. We're talking with Voice in the Darkness. And can you just sort of pick up where you left off?
Oh, sure, Mike. Let me start with this. When you've only got seconds to spare, the police are merely minutes away.
Yes.
And you've gone through this yourself, so you understand exactly what I'm saying. It's a really good thing if we all just take the time to take a 30,000-foot elevation, bigger picture perspective here and take a big look at what's going on in our country, because we're less than 3 months away from our election here, and we've got total dystopian division spread about our country right now in so many more ways than one. We could discuss economics, or we could discuss race or class division, and we'd have our fill of articles. And we could go ahead and go to town probably for a 2-hour broadcast on any one of these. Now, the problem is they're all happening at once. And, we've all got to really understand how to be prepared for this and how to really react appropriately and not drink the Kool-Aid. And, Mike, as I look around at these folks out here in California, that's where I'm at, I'm watching grown men walk down the street wearing a face mask, walking their dog, and their dog is free breathing. And I'm wondering how the role reversal ever occurred here. It's just kind of getting to me, to be honest, if you want the truth.
Yeah, I hear you. It is absurd out there, and we're trying to figure how long, before it really starts falling apart. I was talking with Dave about this earlier, and he was saying, how long until it starts to fall apart? And I said, I think it's already falling apart. I really do. Anyway, do you have anything else for us?
Well, I would say that, Mike, I agree with you in as much as that it's falling all apart on us as we sit here watching. But I do want to let you know that I really want to make it clear to you that I and a lot of other listeners really appreciate what you're doing out here, because we've got limited time, and you're one of those nice gentlemen who really pays attention to what's going on, and you have a good moral compass. And so you get a pretty good outlook on what is happening in our country. And I rely on you and folks like you for the news that the mainstream media isn't giving us. And so I just want to encourage you to keep it up and don't give up and don't feel like anything is getting to you, because, Mike, the biggest thing that's getting to you is each one of us listening, and we applaud you for it.
Well,
and,
thank you.
Just in case anybody, no, thank you, brother. Thank you. And just in case anybody was wondering about why I'm called a voice in the dark, it's a shameless plug for my YouTube channel. That's my name on YouTube. If you look up A Voice in the Dark, you might be able to hear a little more about my complaints regarding our current situation. And I do encourage the listeners. I've only got 93 subscribers. So being a tiny minnow in a really big lake, I don't
Yes.
feel like I'm, self-flagulating here trying to, promote myself. But I want to promote you, Mike, and I do that every day. I try to share your broadcast with as many of my friends as are willing to listen. And the fact that you keep bringing us the really pointed and really accurate news is the reason I feel good about doing that. And I just wanted you to know that.
Well, thank you very much for the kind words, and thank you very much for the phone call. And before we move forward on that here, let's see. Apparently, I've gotten two different emails from two different people. Apparently, the McCloskeys and their attorney said they did, in fact, call 911 first and were, quote, refused service, end quote. And apparently, they repeated that when they were interviewed by Tucker Carlson. So in point of fact, they went 911 first, were told that nothing was available to help them. And at that point, they did what they needed to do to protect, their home and their property, which, by the way, is more than just the house. It's also the land that the house sits on. All right, we're going to go back to the phones here to Ken in New York. Hello, Ken. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Ken, are you there?
Yes, I am. I think the operative phrase here is better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6.
I think that's a very, very good observation.
And I got it from, I think I got it from John, possibly you too. What makes you think that they can't shoot you through a wall? You open the door, you hide behind the door. You got plywood, you have glass. I wouldn't take the chance. I would point it directly at somebody. If the police, if you have any idea the police are going to refuse you service, I think you should contact, hopefully you have a real sheriff, and you contact the sheriff first and say, look, if I'm set upon by these people, will you defend me, and record it. As far as, in case in New York City, I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but the sheriff in Kings County, New York City, is appointed by the mayor, so he's totally useless.
Yeah.
I have other things about lawyers and the judges, but I can go into that later on.
Okay.
If you, just to say, apparently the judge is in on this, because if he should have yanked that, if he was a really honest judge, the first thing he should have done if he found out that prosecutor went and tampered, whatever, he should have yanked his bar card. And the McCloskeys, I sincerely hope somebody is listening that would tell them they should press their attorneys to start filing criminal complaints against other attorneys. I know sharks don't like to eat each other. We know about professional courtesy, but
Yes.
that's a railroad job, just like you said. I mean, that's obstruction of justice, tampering. You can probably come up with 3 or 4 charges for each one. The judge is still a lawyer. He can get a criminal complaint.
Well, we've already got the governor of the state saying he's going to issue a pardon if this farce actually goes through to conviction. But I think any decent defense attorney is going to get up there and they're going to point to the official paperwork that says her gun was not fireable and was reassembled to make it fireable so that she could be charged. And I can't imagine any jury in the world convicting on that.
I hope not. Where was the location of where they had the problem?
Well, it was their home basically in St. Louis.
Oh, St. Louis. Okay, yeah, they should have a sheriff there. But with these large cities, you can never really be sure. I mean, we have one here. I'm planning on contacting them and asking them this question because I think our police here make too much money. Typically make around $100,000 a year, and I certainly wouldn't want to put that in danger by getting shot at.
Yes.
And you know what? Let them defund the police. Quite frankly, they're useless. If they can't protect our police here have a patch on their arm and it says to serve and protect. And my question is what?
Well, the
It's
police
just
I've seen have a patch on their arm saying, "We treat you like a king." As in Rodney.
Where's that?
Rodney King.
Where? Oh, Rodney. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right, Mike. Thanks.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here and switch over to Mark in North Carolina. Hello, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Mark, are you there? There you are.
You hear me now?
I hear you now.
Mike, this guy, what was his name? Glenn, it's called?
Yeah.
Out of his mind. Okay? I'll tell you, I had a little incident a few years back when I first moved here.
Yep.
North Carolina. And about 1 o'clock in the morning, out of sleep, but I wake up real quick, and I heard noises in my in my yard there, right?
Yep.
Like a car running, and then the dog started barking also. I look outside, and there's tire tracks out the window, and there's a car parked there, running, engine running. Looks like about 2 people in there. All right?
Yep.
So I immediately got the shotgun, walked out, racked it, pumped it.
Yep.
Walked out with the 2 dogs too. And that guy, and whoever was driving that car shot out of there like a bat out of hell. I mean, he got out of there real quick. Lucky he didn't hit my car in the meantime while he was getting away. And that was the end of the story. What I did, though, at that point, I did call the sheriff's department, not 911, but the sheriff's department, report what happened, just in case these clowns came out and said that I threatened them or something like that. I don't know. I didn't even know who they were. 1 o'clock in the morning, it was dark, so. And this woman there, this woman dispatcher or deputy, whatever she was, asked me whether I need to be interviewed by the deputy. I said, no, I don't need to be interviewed by anybody. I'm just reporting to you what happened. I'm going back to bed. And that was it, end of story. Okay? That's what guns are there for. Okay?
Yes.
Protection. Second Amendment. Not there for hunting. I don't hunt. I love animals too much. Okay? But I definitely believe in the right of anybody to have a gun, other than maybe somebody is on psych meds. Okay?
Yes.
That includes, by the way, police shouldn't have be on psych meds either. The other thing I wanted to say, too, is that I think you should disband the police and incorporate them into sheriff's departments. Okay? All local and state police should be incorporated into various county sheriff's departments. This way you have a sheriff who's elected.
Yes.
What you see going on in Portland now, instead of a police chief that's appointed by another political hack, one hack appointed by another, you have an elected sheriff. If the elected sheriff doesn't do his job, fired. People can fire him. They also have recall powers, too, at any time. All right? Now, if they're dumb enough to think that it's okay for the sheriff to go along with this stuff, well, then that's on them. And get the federal government to come in, because the people are that dumb to tolerate that. But what you have now are these police chiefs who are absolutely worthless. They're collecting big salaries, most of them in the big cities, to do nothing but twiddle their thumbs. They don't care. They couldn't care less about the people. Just like these mayors don't care anything about the people. Or these governors. All right, especially in these red states and some of the blue. I mean, especially in the blue states, especially in the red states too. They just don't care. It's about time people understand the real peace officers in this country are the armed citizens, the people who are not ready to lay down, lay under their beds, cover themselves with masks, and stay in the house. Those are not American citizens. Okay, well, they may be American citizens, but that's not what this country was built on, Mike. Okay. Nope. And one more thing I just want to bring up. I'd like everybody to go to the the Last American Vagabond. Look him up today. He made a short video about Mike Wallace, Chris Wallace's father, a real investigative reporter, not like his dirtbag son. Okay, Chris. And he did a report about the vaccines of the swine flu and what damage they did, how many people suffered horrible side effects from. By the way, Mike, I remember that flu because I got real sick. I mean, I was out for like over a week. Was out of work for over a week. Could barely get out of bed. I had a dog even at that time. I was living in New York City. So I had to take the dog out for walks. That's about the only going outside I did. Other than that, all I ate was, if I remember right, soup and juices. That's the way it goes. Whatever.
Yes.
After about over a week, I was back to work, and that was that. I never took a vaccine. At least I never took a flu vaccine, period. And that goes to show you. And it's the same thing now. All right? People got to understand this, okay? And the masks don't do you any good. Just get out from under the bed, okay? Get out from under the bed, man. You'll be all right. Get some sunshine. And hopefully you're ready to defend your house, too. Okay, of course, a lot harder to do in New Jersey, okay?
Yes.
But that's about it. I mean, Mike, really, about time we start becoming Americans again. Stop this nonsense. This, by the way, that prosecutor in St. Louis, she should be brought up and charged. She should be charged criminally for abusing her office. Okay, she's a criminal, not the two people brandishing the weapon. By the way, the only problem I saw with the weapon, I think is the woman had her finger on the trigger. You don't do that. Unless
no, you
really,
don't. But again, she was aware that the gun would not actually fire.
I didn't even know that. It was not
No, that's the big stink here. The gun was a prop that had been used in another lawsuit, and the firing pin had been reversed and the spring moved to the other side, so the gun was incapable of firing. And somebody in that prosecutor's office ordered the ballistics lab to put the gun back in working order so she could be charged. Patricia could be charged. That's tampering with evidence, obstruction of justice.
The AR-15, hopefully was actually operable. I hope they came out with at least one operable weapon, right?
Yes.
Because I mean, it's not a very smart thing to do is come out there with a either unloaded or an inoperable weapon. Okay, but I mean for their own safety. But still, this was not it. They were defending their homes against a mob of criminals. Okay, and I'll tell you something. That prosecutor needs to be prosecuted for the whole thing. She needs to go to jail.
I agree.
Shame that this country has come to this kind of situation today where we have this kind of stuff. Shame. That's all I can say, Mike. You have a good day, okay, buddy?
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to V in Arkansas. Hello, V. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. I hope you guys are doing okay up there.
Yeah, we're doing fine.
I had a couple of topics. I'm the first-time caller, and I may sound like I'm scattered all over the page. I'll try to keep focused because I'm not talking on the radio. One of the things on the previous callers had made, I believe her name was Laura, and I understand her upset and everything. However, it appears to be that she's lumping all blacks together, and I don't do that, and I think for the majority people don't. She probably didn't mean to do or say that, referring to the blacks. I personally believe you just don't dump all a particular group together, because if there's some or quite a few that are not so nice and they're really ugly and mean and all that. Okay, I personally believe, in my opinion, with limited information, because I don't have internet or Facebook or smartphones or anything like that. But I think it's not the gangs, quote unquote, it's the people behind the Black Lives Matter movement and Antifa, the ones who aren't on the front lines, and the ones who are, they're just being used like puppets and are severely misled. Though their intention may be, this is a good, got to take care of people. I got that, but they're being misled and being misused, and when they're done, they'll dump them too. That's my viewpoint on that situation anyway. A couple of other things. I was going through a book that I've got, and I wish everybody had it, but there was a quote given by Baron M.A. Rothschild.
Yes.
And I'm sure you're quite familiar with it. Some of your listeners may not be, but he made the statement to give me control, quote, give me control over a nation's currency, and I care not who makes its laws.
Yes.
Whoever controls the volume of money in any country is the master of all its legislation and commerce. Okay.
Yep.
Louis T. McFadden, chairman of the House Banking Commission, U.S. congressman, I think that was back in the 1930s sometime, he made the statement, "We have in this country one of the most corrupt institutions the world has ever known. I refer to the Federal Reserve Board and the Federal Reserve Bank, hereinafter called the Fed. They are not government institutions. They are private monopolies which prey upon the people of the U.S. for the benefit of themselves and their foreign and domestic swindlers, rich and predatory moneylenders." And after 3 attempts on his life, he died, I think, in 1936. George W. Maloff, U.S. Senator from Nevada, in 1957, when he spoke before the conference, he alluded as follows to the families that secretly owned the Federal Reserve Bank and controlled finances. He quote, "I believe that if the people of this nation fully understand..."
Hold that thought.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
going to put it on hold. We got to take a break for commercials, and I'm going to come right back to you to that quote. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with V in Arkansas, and we're talking about, she's giving us some quotes, historical quotes about the Federal Reserve. So you were you had just finished with McFadden, and you were moving on.
Yes, sir. I'll try to make it real quick. But George W. Maloff, he was a U.S. Senator from Nevada. He spoke before Congress in 1957, and he alluded in his speech as follows to the families that secretly owned the Federal Reserve Bank and controlled the finances of the U.S. Quote, "I believe that if people of this nation fully understood what Congress has done to them over the past 49 years," now he's speaking in 1957, so he's referring back. "Over the past 49 years, they would move on Washington. They would not wait for an election. It adds up to a preconceived plan to destroy the economic and social independence of the United States." Peter Hoagland, Nebraska, state senator. Okay, now he's part of the Trilateral Commission way back in there. Zbigniew Brzezinski, I believe, and Carol Quigley, and all those people with the Clintons. Anyway, he made a radio program stated on 1983, "Fundamental Bible-believing people do not have the right to indoctrinate their children in their religious beliefs because we, the state, are preparing them for the year 2000, when America will be part of a one world order global society and their children will not fit in," unquote. Carol Quigley, who's deceased Bill Clinton's mentor, professor of history at Georgetown University, wrote in his book, and he is also a member of the CFR, in his book, quote, "Hope and Tragedy," he stated, quote, "The CFR is the American branch of a society which originated in England and believes national boundaries should be obliterated and one world rule established. They need to put an end to the United States, and all of their information is read in their own publications called the Foreign Affairs Magazine."
Okay.
Warren Christopher, former Secretary of State under Clinton, stated in January 25th of 1993 on CNN, quote, "We must get the new world order on track and bring the UN into its correct role in regards to the U.S., unquote. The Washington Times reported on May 12, 1996, quote, "Secretary of State Warren Christopher has declared protection of the, quote, global environment to be a fundamental principle of American foreign policy. In a recent speech at Stanford University, Mr. Christopher unveiled the, quote, environmental initiative for the 21st century, unquote. An ambitious agenda of green diplomatic initiatives intends to promote the renewed vigor throughout the world." Now, that's just some quotes, and that was from the Washington Post. And I said all this to...
V, you need to kind of sum up.
I'm sorry.
You need to kind of come
That's
to
what I'm going to.
Okay.
Okay, that's where I'm going now, and I am. I'm sorry it's taking so long. The conclusion is, We've got supposedly a shortage change of coins in Arkansas, supposedly, and I heard worldwide. Don't know that to be true.
Well,
We have
certainly
got a shortage of aluminum. I'm sorry.
I said it's certainly nationwide in the United States.
We have got supposedly there becoming a shortage of aluminum, so you're going to be harder and harder to find certain vegetables and things and drinks. They're all going to the major brands and going to plastic. You know, stop the plastic. Now we're back to plastic. No, we're out of cans and aluminum shortage. And now it's the mask and the control and all this part of, like, for example, I went in February before all this stuff broke out, and I bought a small bag of a box of masks that protects against bacteria, not virus. That's the blue mask that everybody wears. It's bacterial filtration, okay, for about $5. There's 20 of them. Today I went in there and $17.50 for 20. Went by the drugstore to see if they had some masks in a box. No, but we do have a few. We can sell you 5 for $8, which they gave us in a Ziploc bag. But they didn't have masks. The whole point of it is the control issue, monetarily, economically, mentally, emotionally, and all the others. And the lady I met going out the door, was mad at us. I had her, and she said she made the statement, whether you like it or not, this November these masks are coming off. And then she said some explicative, and then it said the word Democrat. So,
Okay.
I just thought, okay, you've made my day. Okay. Anyway, I just wanted to I know it's a lot at once and it covers a lot of different topics, but there is one last thing, and I will repeat this. In our area, and these are people that I know, real quick, there were 2 ladies who went into another part of Arkansas, said, oh my gosh, we better get tested, you know, see if we've got something going on. They're over 70. They've known each other for years and went to school together. They were not tested because the line was too long. A few days later, they got in the mail or were contacted and said you had both tested for COVID-19 positive, and they never were tested. Now that's the truth. It's not a rumor. It's a fact.
I've heard similar stories. Have to let you go, V. We got other callers waiting on the line, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the show here. We're going to go back to the phones to Nabel in Kansas City. Thank you for waiting patiently. What's on your mind?
There. One thing about Narcolepsy is that I find admirable is here we have an example of a middle-aged couple who is able to protect themselves with a gun against an angry mob. And the gun grabbers have to be going crazy because they destroyed every argument that they have ever made.
Yes.
You call 911. How many recordings have we heard? You call 911, and they're like, "Don't hurt the protesters. Be nice to the protesters. I'm under attack. They're smashing my windows. Don't fight back. Be nice to the protesters. We're not going to send cops. They're not going to come in." I mean, we're completely left helpless. And it's by design. Now, the beautiful part here is not a single shot was fired. These guys were able to defend their homes without firing a shot against an angry mob who's been killing people. I can't tell you how many videos I've seen of people getting shot, kicked to death, beat to death. And all this has to be on their minds. They have to know these things, especially being in St. Louis, what they're up against. Had they gone in their house and hid the guns, if those protesters would have stormed the house, they would have had to shoot and start killing people. So, the people that say they should have just barricaded themselves in a home, terrible idea. How many people would have been dead had they done that? And the protesters decided to barge in. Complete disaster. Waving a weapon just lets people know, hey, this is what I'm packing. Stay away from me. You're showing your cards. This is a great thing to do. I never was a fan of concealed carry. Just carry it openly. But it's so much safer. I feel safe in a bank standing next to somebody who's showing off a gun. I know this guy's going to protect us. Lastly, I called back in March when I did say I felt COVID was a false flag, on us. I did say at the time, once the lockdowns are done, they're going to hit us with something else, something worse. And I think that's the riots, Black Lives Matter, which come out, every 4 years. The next thing I feel that's going to come down is they're going to take away our food. I think they're really going to try really hard to starve us by the end of the year. And
that'll definitely provoke riots.
I agree, and maybe that's what they want. And to that point, come November, after the elections, nobody is going to accept these elections. Like you've always said, you can fraud up to a point, but once it's obvious, the game is over. It's going to be obvious, and no one's going to care. It's in our face, and nobody cares. They're going to make it as obvious as they don't even care. Everybody going to know it's fraud, and they're going to still say, "Hey, this is a legit election. Get rid of Trump." Nobody's going to accept it. If Trump wins, the left is going to accept it. If the left wins, the right's not going to accept it. What happens at that point? Have a good day, everybody.
Well, thanks a lot for the phone call. And we're going to switch over to Al in West Virginia. Hello, Al. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Al, are you there? Okay, let's go to Peter in Los Angeles. Hello, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. Listen, I wanted to make a couple of contrasts here. There was a coach in Oregon, Portland, a high school football coach, who was fired because he was also a sergeant in the Portland police. They just fired him from his high school coaching job simply because he was a police officer. There was a guy, a teacher, and I can't remember where from, who was fired for tweeting. This is what he tweeted: "Trump is our president. Nothing more. Trump is our president," and he lost his job. Now, you ran it on your thing. I think I may have sent it to you this morning. There was a picture that had been texted out or tweeted out in Springfield, Ohio, of about a 2-year-old white toddler and still in diapers. One adult male was holding this child was on his stomach, was holding this child's hands behind his back, and another black male was doing what was done to what's his name, the counterfeiting porn star. What's his name again? Up in Minneapolis, with George Floyd, with a knee on the neck and another one on the back. This is on a toddler, and a white toddler, mind you, and it was saying now, and the subtitle to all this under the picture that this guy tweeted this out was, "Tell me Black lives don't matter now, motherfucker."
Well, gotta watch the language. Gotta watch the language.
I'm sorry, but I'm quoting the text.
I understand
that's what the guy said.
Well, actually, the caption was BLM, MF, the initials, but we know that's what they really meant. And
yeah. But Mike, not only did that not make the national news at all.
Oh yeah.
But then there was a guy who was a special ed teacher in Georgia, who then texted when commenting on that tweet of the guy on that little baby's neck, "Lean on into it until death." Special education teacher encouraged
Brian
BLM.
His name.
Yes. And now, mind you, this other guy got fired simply because he had a job as a police sergeant, and another guy for saying Trump is the president. What kind of a savage? You believe this guy was, by the way, a special ed teacher?
Yeah.
He shouldn't be around anybody at all. It shouldn't even be. That guy should not even be around animals. But at any rate, what a double standard. What a double standard. And I had a conversation the other day with a neighbor who was saying, "Oh, the police are brutal." And I agree with your former caller was saying that the people behind BLM and Antifa, the people who've been lying to everybody about the statistics and hiding the crime statistics which are horribly, I mean, really are horrible about the mass disproportionate black crime. And they've been lying for years, so that these people now feel enabled, like they're being wronged. Not that the society at large is being wronged by them, but they're being wronged because they don't even know the crime rates. Perhaps, maybe they do, and just can feel it, but they don't know them. But at any rate, this community policing, Mike, where it's implicit in every law enforcement encounter, from a jaywalking stop to a traffic citation. Force is implicit in all of it. If I was jaywalking across the street, and somebody stopped me and said, let's say it's a community police person, and since I don't have a license plate, tattooed to my butt, there's no way to ID me. And they said, listen, stop, sir, I want to stop you, and I'm going to give you a ticket. I'd give him the finger and I'd walk on, right?
Yeah.
They can't ID me. I wouldn't go along with that. And the only thing that makes you not do it is the fact that they have a gun, right? Or whatever, even for the routine traffic stop. And it's implicit in everyone. Now, I'll go along with it, right? Somebody stops me. But what if I've got a couple of felonies and I'm facing a 3 strikes thing, right? Would I be more likely to fight and resist? And of course, we know the crime rate in the black community, right? So would they be more inclined to resist? Yeah. And when they're told by everybody else that they're always being wronged, well, that would be another reason. But it's implicit in everything, and they are nuts. If you take that implied resort to force out of it, there is no law enforcement at all. So it's just, you have to manage it. You have to do it responsibly. You can't, but nevertheless, these people won't do it even with armed police. So, the only thing standing between us and that little kid, maybe, with a couple people holding you down, are the police. So it's and the people that are ginning that all this hate up and turning people against each other and denying everybody the facts of what the crime figures are, which also further enables these people. They're the ones that are really responsible, but that community can be played like a Stradivarius, Mike, and they do it all the time.
Yep.
They're played like Stradivariuses constantly. And by the way, I've said this before. In 1991, I know you were in LA then, when 2,400 Korean businesses were burned down because they were Korean, and they didn't call that a hate crime. They didn't call that a hate crime. The biggest pogrom in the history of the United States. So, anyways, this is really getting bad, and unless this is looked squared in the eye, and you call it a spade, not make a pun or anything, but call and listen, the crime is horrible. If you guys want Black Lives Matter, well, quit killing yourselves and everybody else. And there were only 9 police unarmed incidents where policemen in the whole country last year killed an unarmed black person. There were 19 unarmed white people killed.
Yes.
So more than twice, even though they commit more than double of everybody else violent crime of everybody else, and we're 62% of the population. And they're 13. So unless you call a spade, Mike, this will never change. But it's the media who's not doing that, and look who controls the media. Yes. I mean, it's all one thing, as that lady was saying earlier. We're being played like Stradivariuses also.
Yes.
Anyways, that's my comment, Mike. I'm sorry I ranted a little too long.
Well, that's okay. We understand, and glad that your phone is working again here. Thanks a lot for the call, Peter. We're going to switch over to Jim in Illinois. Hello, Jim. Welcome to the show. Thank you for waiting. What's on your mind?
I'm doing quite well, Michael. First of all, regarding what Peter stated, most of your criminals are on Wall Street or in Washington, D.C. But the reason why I call, say it again, please.
The successful ones.
Right. The reason I'm calling regarding the shooting at the funeral home in Chicago, and this is something most people don't know, and the mayor and the police department don't want you to know. This is what happened. First of all, the people that were shot, most of them were innocent bystanders, 10 women and 5 men. And the reason that happened, there were 2 funerals going on at the same time. But this is the kicker. People in the community and also the funeral director, they got word 2 days before the funeral that there was going to be some shooting in front of the funeral home. So the funeral director and community leaders called the police and said, look, can you have some police in front of the building where we're having these funerals? The police said no. When the shooting started, the nearest cop was maybe 2 or 3 blocks away. So again, you have a community that's concerned about their fellow citizens and their neighbors. They call the police, and that's what the police always say. You hear something, call us. They call, and the police did nothing. But yet and still, a week ago Friday, they had over 60 policemen downtown in riot gear protecting a statue of Columbus.
Yeah. That's pretty strange priorities.
Right. You know, you care more about a statue, the individuals, and those people that were shot. They're going to have medical problems for the rest of their lives. But yet and still, the police did not respond. What does it take for them to respond?
Well, it looks like the fix was in. If this was gang related, very, organized.
I was going to say it was gang related. You're right.
Okay. Well, somebody in the police department got bought off then.
Well, that's what I'm thinking also. Yeah. And unfortunately, you have 15 people shot. 10 of them were innocent bystanders. They were not gang members or anything like that. So, and that's something that the mayor of Chicago and the police department will not want people. They do not want people to know that. And this mayor of Chicago, she is absolutely ridiculous and incompetent. So, Michael, I'm going to let you go on that note. Take care.
All right. Thanks an awful lot here. We're going to switch over to Wayne in Texas. Thank you for waiting patiently. What's on your mind? We lost Wayne. We lost Wayne, so let's go to Doug in Pennsylvania. Hello, Doug. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. Good show as usual.
Thank you.
Normally wouldn't call in, but I heard Glenn in Philadelphia, and of course I'm a resident of Pennsylvania. I've been here all my life. I live in one of the most least populated counties there is here and border the National Forest. And we do have a thing in Pennsylvania called the Castle Doctrine. It was Bill HB 40. It does give you the right to not retreat anymore. You don't have to have a personal carry permit to be able to defend yourself here. You had a lot of things really wrong. But I did see some things that the McCluskeys did that I thought were tactically really wrong, but I think everything turned out very well for them.
Yes.
And I'm glad of that. That was a good thing, and it can show you just brandishing a weapon sometimes can stop everything. Maybe a good thing.
I agree with you about the tactical thing, and it's like those commercials from the Front Sight Firing Academy. Just having the gun is not enough. You've got to have a plan and you've got to train, because I don't think they were really, outside of owning the guns, one of which was inoperable. I don't think they were really prepared to deal with that situation. So they were kind of improvising as they went along.
Well, I certainly hope they do a little training and learn to be tactically a little more adept.
I'm sure they will now.
And everybody really needs to do that, because you never know when a scenario like that will happen. The police take over an hour and 45 minutes to get to me here. And that's just basic. There's only 2 of them in the whole county at any one time, and they're state police. The sheriff's department won't do anything, which I'm really surprised about. They don't do anything but transfer prisoners back and forth to court. That's about it. And serve subpoenas, so you can't really rely on them. You're pretty much on your own.
Yep. All right. Well, listen, thank you very much for the phone call. We got to let you go and take a commercial break, and we'll be back with the last segment of our program after these 2 words. Welcome back to our show here. And as we reported yesterday, the New York police finally cleared out the remaining Occupy City Hall protesters. And these protesters, you know, who talk about the environment, you know, the liberal thing about global warming and whatnot, they apparently left such a mess. It's going to take weeks to clean it all up, what they left behind. So, you know, they talk a good... They don't walk their talk is basically what it comes down to. Now, Senator Ted Cruz has introduced what's called the Reclaim Act. This will provide restitution to victims of violent leftist mobs in autonomous zones. The legislation would allow for treble damages, enabling plaintiffs in autonomous zones to recover triple the amount of actual damages caused to his or her property that were sustained as a result of the rioting. I assume that what they're planning on doing with this Reclaim Act is to go after the rioters themselves and make them personally financially liable for the destruction that they've done. All righty. Now, Joe Biden is on the warpath against Donald Trump, obviously. Calls Trump the first racist president, apparently forgetting the ones who owned slaves and forgetting about Democrat Woodrow Wilson, who absolutely hated the blacks and loved the KKK. But then Joe Biden doesn't seem to have all of his marbles together anyway. Hulu is set to release a TV series based on this novel that imagines what Hillary Clinton's life would have been like if she'd never married Bill. And all of a sudden, I'm very nervous about all this effort to get Hillary's face and name out there. This is supposedly a New York Times best-selling novel. I've never even heard of it myself. It's based on an alternate version of Hillary Clinton's life, and it's going to become a scripted television show. I'm not going to bother tuning in here. Okay, apparently federal prosecutors have charged Matt Borges, founder of the anti-Trump Right Side Super PAC, with conspiracy to commit racketeering on Tuesday. And apparently Borges, a former Ohio Republican Party chairman who's now a lobbyist, is one of 5 people who've been charged in connection with a nuclear bailout bill that was quickly moved through the Ohio State Legislature last year. The others are Ohio House Speaker Larry Householder, lobbyist Neil Clark, First Energy Solutions lobbyist Juan Caspedes, and householder aide Jeff Longstreth. Apparently, the political operation accepted over $60 million in bribe money to secure First Energy Corp. A $13 billion public bailout. Heavy hitters there. Anyway, Borges co-founded the Right Side Super PAC with fellow Republicans Anthony Scaramucci. The organization is focused on defeating Donald Trump in the 2020 election here. Apparently, Christine Pelosi, Nancy's daughter, was temporarily banned from Twitter after appearing to support an attack on Senator Rand Paul. The Democrat House Speaker's daughter brought up the assault on him that happened in November of 2017. Righty. Now, we're hearing all this talk about how close Durham is getting, that there's plea deals, and we've seen this pattern before. We're constantly being told it's going to happen. It's going to happen. The guilty is going to be charged. And it never really does seem to happen. I'm going to pick up on this first thing tomorrow when we get into our show on our Friday show. Anyway, there's the music. Stay tuned for John Stadmiller's show. Steve Elkins is guest hosting tonight. And please spread the word of RBN, spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please donate. We need your help desperately, desperately, desperately. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.